The fabric of our society is made up of many threads. Some of them are small: streetlights, bin collections, potholes, community centres. But some are huge, like social care. Few subjects are as unglamorous and unscrutinised as local council spending.
I have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
But few things have as much direct impact on people's quality of life. And pick at those threads year after year, and it adds up to the sense that the social fabric, the deal between citizens and state, is fraying. We've come here to Oakham in Rutland. Rutland has one of the highest council tax rates in the UK, and it is a historic market town. It looks affluent as you're driving through, but a lot of people here are really struggling to afford that council tax. Our story starts with the money we put into the system. Nearly all of us have to pay council tax, but that's pretty much the only consistent thing about it. And that variability points to some of the issues with local government in general, all the way from input to outcomes. Hannah, Lucy and Zoe live in Oakham, which under Rutland Council has the highest rate in the country. Do you guys feel like you're getting value for money from that?
Not at all. Not in the slightest, no. I think it's reached a point where we're seeing not just a lack of development in the town, but also an actual reduction in the infrastructure and in the facilities. Yeah. It's stripping back.
It's just making an already unaffordable situation harder.
Yeah.
You know, you're already trying not to turn your heating on as much as possible to save those few extra pennies, and now those few extra pennies are going to go into the council's pocket.
People pay council tax based on the type of property they live in, calculated all the way back in 1991 and the value it was then. It's tough for people like Lucy, Zoe and Hannah in Rutland. They live in an area with the highest council tax in the whole of the country, at over £2,400. Nottingham, Lewis, Dorset and Wealdon not far behind, all in the top payers of tax. By comparison, 3 of the lowest paying places are in London. If you live in a Band D property in Westminster, you're only paying £883 for the privilege. When we look at proportion of income, people in Mole Valley Council area are paying over 8% of their income on council tax. But at the other end of the scale, in southwest London, Wandsworth, people are paying just 2.1%. Council tax is the definition of a postcode lottery. Houses here in Wandsworth can cost millions of pounds, but people are spending a lower proportion of their income than people in poorer areas. And there's plenty more inconsistency across the system. Back in Oakham, and it also looks well to do. The council argues they receive much less funding from central government per resident, less than half, than other areas.
There is a fundamental message around fairness. To £504 compared to £1,019 really simply isn't fair.
We'll see just how much government funding has fallen later on. But if the money isn't there, councils have to make room for it. This is Congleton, a market town in East Cheshire. Over recent years, it's closed down 2 recycling centres. So this happened just last night?
Yes, about 10 o'clock last night, a local resident put on Facebook, Congleton News and Views, about how disgusting and disgraceful this fly tip is.
In the same period, fly tipping has soared, as local councillor Robert Douglas told us.
Well, obviously, as you can see here, we've got beautiful countryside, and it's a real eyesore. So as well as the financial cost of cleaning it all up, we are seeing our area being blighted.
Tempers are fraying too. This driver stopped next to us to complain.
You never used to get it like this, ruined the top of this road.
Yeah.
Absolutely ruined.
This will get cleaned up, and it might not seem like a big deal, but it is another tug on the social fabric, the relationship between citizens and state. If you keep tugging all the time in enough places, it feels like it's starting to unravel. Or battered roads, this one on a school route that hasn't been fixed in 5 years. I mean, more broadly, does it feel, with cuts, with council tax going up, you're not getting much for it, that every year, year after year, things are getting harder, almost to breaking point?
Yeah, it's totally like that. The whole highway system's broken nationwide for me. The government, again, have to take it more serious and start funding councils, getting all the roads resurfaced. All they do at the moment is put a bit of cement, a bit of tarmac in, It rains heavily, it gets lifted, so we need something more sustainable.
Spending on roads has dropped from nearly £1 billion across all councils 10 years ago to around £700 million today. Streetlights have lost £100 million in funding. And that's because councils are spending more money on social care, which they have a legal duty to provide, unlike roads and street lighting. It's gone from £26 billion 10 years ago to £30 billion today, even after adjusting for inflation.
These are all my Atari Jaguar games.
Cheshire East Council spends 64.5% of its total budget on social care, on places like this and on people like David Ryder.
There you go, Star Wars.
David is 57 years old, lives in full-time care in Congleton and is a massive fan of 80s new wave music.
What do you reckon?
It's good, good sound. Good song.
What do you reckon?
He's worried about moving to new accommodation in Macclesfield. Some of that worry is because it will take him further away from the highlight of his month, a disco for disabled people run by volunteers.
Do you need a minute?
Yeah. Have a minute, please.
Other community activities have been cut by the council.
Do you feel like there's less services from the government to help you?
It's about time the government did pull its weight in mental health and also physical health.
I think even previous to you being with us, there was a lot more things funded for you to do, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I think we've definitely seen that cut back.
In councils across the country, demand for and the cost of social care is rising, so cuts have to be made elsewhere. And those costs are pushing some councils to the brink. Nottingham Castle was built nearly 1,000 years ago as an impregnable Norman fort. Even as a tourist attraction, though, it's just as inaccessible. Owned by the council, it's been closed since November, when its trust went into liquidation. This castle is a symbol of a city and a council facing financial distress, but it's not the only one. Our research shows across the country, councils are facing real difficulties. That's meant cuts to vital services, like Base 51, a youth centre just around the corner from the castle, which has only 6 months left in this property unless it gets more funding.
Before I started coming here, I was going out, getting into trouble, but since I started coming here, they offered counselling, and obviously that's hoping to get onto a better path.
If I weren't here, I'd be getting in trouble every day basically. I'd probably get arrested by now.
Nottingham was forced to issue what's known as a Section 114 notice, an official declaration of financial distress. It's not the only one. Slough, Thurrock, Croydon have done the same within the last year, and Woking has warned it might have to as well. The notices have come as councils receive much less funding from central government. This shows the decline over the last 8 years, a nearly 90% drop. Woking in Surrey has racked up nearly £2 billion in debt investing in property developments like this, and it's in danger of running out of cash. You might ask why a commuter town like Woking needs a skyline like Singapore, but these towers are the products of a system whose demands, whose incentives have changed. With less funding from central government, councils were urged to find new revenue streams. The man who changed those incentives was Lord Eric Pickles, who served as Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government under the coalition government from 2010.
Essentially to give them more power, give them more say, and give them more say over how they spend things. And it's called Localism, and it really was designed to get power down to the lowest level in local government.
Councils were encouraged to be more entrepreneurial, there was less financial oversight. Was it a surprise then that you have councils like Thurrock, like Croydon, that ran into huge amounts of trouble?
I wouldn't have said so. I think a lot of it boils down to a lack of due diligence. But it's the ones that you talk about, I think that there's been a kind of a real problem where they've sort of moved into this without properly thinking it through.
For many councils, it feels like the fight of their lives. And even at the parish level, things can get very heated.
You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
Jackie Weaver was catapulted into internet notoriety.
You may now elect a chairman.
No, they can't, because the vice chair's here. I take charge.
When a parish council Zoom meeting descended into chaos.
Read them and understand them!
As money has got tighter over, I would say, the last 10 years probably, we've seen the district and county councils in Cheshire disappeared, the county council disappeared altogether, contract so much that now they only perform their statutory functions. Now that means all the kind of community stuff that is visible, that makes us feel good, doesn't happen anymore. They don't have any money to do it. They only focus on their statutory obligations.
A government spokesperson told us, "We are making an additional £5.1 billion available for councils in England in the next financial year. We are also providing multi-year certainty to local government, outlining spending over the next 2 years to allow councils to plan ahead with confidence." But certainty and confidence are in short supply for those of us who rely on councils, who've seen services reduced or removed and wonder what's going next. Those threads are cut and the fabric eventually unravels. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.